home of horror podcast, home of horror, the home of horror podcast, What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Home of Horror podcast. I'm your host, John. This is episode 45, I believe. Getting closer to 50. Gonna have to do a big one for 50. Not that this isn't a big one, because it is, my friends. It is. Today, I'm pouring a little 10-year rye I got from my buddy Tom. It's Whistle Pig Rye, 10-year. Good bottle. Go get yourself some. Oh, yeah. Wet the old whistle. You know what I'm saying? So episode 45. Decided to jump in here. I just got done watching The Descent in 2005, I believe. I wanted to jump right in here before I got my day going a little bit. This movie now, it is 2005. It's a British horror film, directed by Neil Marshall. I wanted to, this movie is not a masterpiece per se, but it is one of the most effective movies I think I've ever watched as far as horror goes. Super effective, a roller coaster ride, kind of an adventure at the same time, you know. I read an interview with Neil Marshall, the director, who said he always wanted to do a horror movie in a cave because what's darker than a cave? You know, what's scarier than that? It's being stuck in a cave, and he's right. It is terrifying, man. On the cover of this movie, it says it starts off with a bloody bang and never lets up, and that's pretty true. I mean, that it starts off with them whitewater rafting and stuff, but that first scene where they're driving in the car, Sarah, her husband, and her daughter, and all of a sudden they hit that car and a piece of rebar or pipe or whatever it is comes right through the windshield and boom, crashes right through and hits the daughter right in the head, killing her, obviously. Super crazy way to start. You don't see that scene coming at all. So it's pretty brilliant to start it off that way. And what this movie does good is the sound effects aren't like too intense. There's not a bunch of this, loud rising sound that leads up to these jump scares or these kills. It just kind of happens out of thin air, and it's a little bit scarier that way. It's a little bit jumpier. And this is a jumpy movie. Man, that rye is good. This is also my type of setting for a movie. I love movies set in the mountains, especially the Appalachian Mountains. I'm familiar with the Appalachian Trail, being from Maine. It goes all the way from Georgia to Maine. And I think this is set in North Carolina. So it's more south, obviously, but still a great setting for the movie, set in a cabin at the beginning. And obviously the story really gets going. It starts a year after the accident. And Sarah comes back to meet all her friends with a few new ones. More importantly, you have Juno there. You have Becca, you have Beth. And it's a good group of actors. It's a good, quality actors. So it starts off that way, and really, it slows down a bit right there. But I mean, back to the point of the cover of the movie saying it starts off with a bloody bang and then doesn't let up. It's pretty true. I mean, you really only get 5 or 10 minutes here. That's like slow time. So obviously these girls are going to, Sarah's experienced this trauma and depression, and her friends are looking to get her back to exploring and adventuring with them. They're obviously all outdoors people. So they go to a cabin in North Carolina, and they're going to do some cave exploring, which I'm all set with, man. I don't think I would ever do cave exploring. I mean, maybe if it was like some really big stuff and not a lot of, rope involved and shit like that. If it's just walking and hiking around, I'm cool with that. But the small passageways and the rappelling and stuff like that. No, thank you. I'm all set, especially after seeing movies like this. That first jump scene we get in the cabin where you know we see that Sarah experienced these night terrors and these nightmares, and you don't really know when they're happening until she wakes up. It just kind of feels like it's part of the movie. She wakes up in the middle of the night in the cabin and looks out the window and it's really quiet. Again, no sound, really quiet. And all of a sudden that pole comes crashing through the window. Jumped the shit out of me. Great scene. They do a really good job with the jump scares in here, and it's a quick scene, but it gets the juices flowing. You know what I'm saying? Gets the blood flowing. Gets you ready for the rest of the movie. Yeah, really cool scene. They do a great job with those. This whole movie is kind of based on jump scares, but it's also just scary and eerie in other ways. Um, they set out to do these caves, and they're gonna, they have a map or a book that shows all these caves are labeled and with the routes through them and the passages and stuff like that. And just the idea of going into a cave without one of those books, without one of those maps, is scary in itself. To set it up this way, where they get to this cave and Juno leaves the book behind because she's Juno, she sucks, kind of. Um, that's pretty terrifying stuff, if you ask me. Yeah, it's nightmare fuel. You know what I mean? Now with this movie, I do want to mention that I've seen this movie before. I just recently watched it, but I saw it when it first came out, and I think I only saw it maybe once maybe twice. But I remember liking it a lot, and I just really wanted to revisit it. Um, and when I did, I don't remember it being this scary. I remember I liked it, and I thought it was really cool and a cool premise, cool concept, cool plot. But I don't remember it being quite as scary as it was and shot the way it was. It was really good. Most of the movie is dark because they're in a cave, obviously, but the lighting is still good. Like you still you feel like you're in this cave with them. So yeah, they go exploring, and they have this one scene which I didn't like at all, and it's just at the beginning. It's kind of a throwaway scene, so it doesn't really matter. But they're in they first get in the cave, they rappel down, and this cave is pretty much a big hole in the ground. You know what I mean? Um, and when they get in there, they're looking through, and then Sarah like looks in a tunnel, and like these bats come out, and it's like another quick jump scare to get the blood going. And the bats look fucking terrible. I mean, truly awful. Horrible CGI. Now, it doesn't really matter much because it doesn't have much to do with the movie. Well, I guess it kind of does once we get into it, but I mean, it is just horrible CGI. And I know I say that every damn episode I talk about CGI, but it's the truth. I have to mention it. It's part of my job here. How bad it fucking was, man. You see them like spiraling out of the cave, and like they just look like little pieces of paper. It is fucking terrible. It looked like a scene out of The Birds, you know what I mean, but not shot in the 60s, shot in the fucking early 2000s, which you would hope that they would do a little bit better. Or don't just show them coming out of the cave. I understand you could do a little bit of CGI that way, but like don't show them spiraling out. It looked fucking awful. I don't even think for 2005 it looked good. Pretty sure it was pretty fucking terrible if you ask me. So yeah, that was kind of just a throwaway scene anyway. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have too much to do with the plot. So, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But it did look fucking shitty. Man, this rye is good. That'll get the blood flowing too. Um, so basically, they stop and they start eating lunch or whatever time it is. You don't really know. Which is just apples, by the way. Like, come on. You going in caves all day? Bring a fucking sandwich, man. Pack of ham and cheese. PB&J. Not just an apple. Come on now. What if you do get stuck down there? Um, you know, After they eat, they do find, they kind of, Sarah's looking around and she finds a passage, the next passage to the next, part of the cave. And I mean, it is small. It's so small, and you know once they enter there, they're fucked. Like they fucked up once they go into this little passage. I would never do that. That's another thing. Going through those little passages and trying to sneak through. I mean, I'm not like super claustrophobic, but I'm enough. I'm enough to not do that shit. But you know, once they go through this, that they're just fucked up, and the movie's really gonna get going. Um, and obviously, Juno, Sarah's like, "Oh, I don't remember this part in the book. I didn't imagine it like this small." And Juno's like, "Oh, it's gonna be fucking fine," and just making her even more unlikable. At this point, you're really starting to fucking hate Juno. Um, and when we get that little scene at the beginning where Sarah's husband and Juno, the year prior when the accident happened, they kind of give each other a look, and you're like, oh, this fucking bitch. They had an affair already. First 2 seconds of the movie, it's like, come on, man, don't be doing that. That's your homie. Sarah's your homie. What are you doing? Um, and obviously they have to have the scene, like in all these types of movies, you got to have that scene. Same thing in like As Above, So Below. If you guys have seen that movie, those little narrow passageways, someone has to get stuck. They always got to get fucking stuck. Truly terrifying. I would fucking hate that. Start hyperventilating as Sarah does, trying to calm her down. And I can't remember if it's Becca or Beth or Sam. One of them, tries to talk her down, get her to calm down. She tells the worst joke. What is it? It's something like, how do you give a lemon an orgasm? You tickle its citrus. And I'm like, oh, come on. Let's get a better joke. Let's get a dirtier joke, right? I mean, come on now. That's terrible. But yeah, scary. Obviously, the tunnel collapses, and that's nightmare fuel, man. Fuck that. I wonder how they filmed. I didn't do much research on how they filmed these cave scenes. I'm guessing they obviously had a full set of just caves and tunnels and shit that they filmed in. Um, I highly doubt that they shot a lot of it in actual caves. Maybe there was a few scenes here and there that were real, but obviously the lighting would be terrible, and they do go off a lot of natural light in this movie, which is always cool to see. I like it when it's keep it super fundamental like that. But I'm guessing it was all man-made caves, and they did a really good job if that's the case. I mean, they look really good. You really can't tell the difference. So props to them if that's what they did do. I'm pretty certain they didn't go into these little small caves and put actors through hell like that. Uh, but for Sarah, who plays Sarah? Um, Shauna McDonald. I mean, I'm sure that was, for all of them, really, they all go through the tunnel. I'm sure that was kind of stressful, man. Even if it is fake, it's like these small spaces you got to film in, cameras in your face. That probably sucked, man. I don't even know if I'd be able to do that. Um, so obviously the cave collapses and you got to find a different way out, right? So you're setting up this whole situation where, oh, why did Juno not bring the book? Sarah's got all this trauma. So you're getting a little bit of hints here and there that, this cave might be undiscovered. It's not the cave they're supposed to be in, which is pretty much what we find out, right? I mean, we find out that Juno didn't bring the book because that it's a undiscovered cave that they know of, and she wanted to have them discover them themselves. You know what I mean? They wanted to be the first people. They wanted it named after them. Actually, specifically, Juno said, "I wanted to name it after you, Sarah." And then Sarah kind of looks at her or whatever. It's like, oh, maybe you wanted it named after you. Again, hate Juno. Terrible character, man. Holy shit, girl sucks. The more you get into the movie, the more you don't like her. Um, they got to find a different way out. They start to panic a little bit, and then Holly falls down the hole, right? Thinks she sees light. I think they said it was like the graphite from the rocks that looked like light, which I'm not sure if that's accurate. Maybe that's true. If you're in a dark cave and you see some graphite and it's reflecting off your light, that it looks like daylight. I'm not sure. But she falls down this fucking hole, breaks her leg. Now they're in deep shit, right? They gotta rappel down there, get her out somehow. fuck that. You know, there's a reason when people go on these expeditions that they're like, you're kind of on your own if shit like that happens, you know. But obviously they go and help her. You got to build the plot, right? And they start finding. This is where it gets really interesting. This is my favorite, parts of the movie where, I love these types of movies where you start to find out bits and pieces, and this is where the writing comes in, which I like to write. So this is what I really pay attention to and really enjoy in horror films. When you write these little bits and pieces in that, they're starting to put things together. They start to find, old climbing gear and, stuff like that where they're like, oh, people have definitely been down here. And if the cave is undiscovered, you kind of, put two and two together. Well, these people probably didn't make it out, right? They find bones, all that kind of stuff. And they start to really panic. They start to yell for help, which isn't going to help anybody. But if I was in that situation, same thing. I'm sure all of you as well. You'd start to panic. You'd start to, lose your mind a little bit, like doing things that are kind of irrational. Panic, all that panic sets in. And at the same time, like in this movie, it's not a found footage film, but you do have a camcorder. And, right around that time, found footage movies were getting bigger. You already had Blair Witch, 5 or 6 years before that. I'm not sure if the Paranormal Activities, they were probably, the first one was probably right around that time as well, first two. So you get a little found footage in here, which are some of the better scares, because the director and the writer had to find ways to create light. You know what I mean? You can't just have the helmet lights. You need flashlights. You need and the camcorder provides you with an out almost. It's like, hey, we can use the infrared on a camcorder if they have one down there. We can use the flashlight on that. We can show bits and pieces of the video, which they did. So it's not a found footage film, but they're some of the best shots and scares in the movie are from the camcorder itself. Like we get that famous scene when they find these pile of bones in this one part of the cave, and I mean they're freaking out. They're like, there's obviously something down here, and they show the camcorder shot and it pans, and all of a sudden you got one of these fucking creatures, right, that are just standing behind one of them. It's like a big shot in the movie, obviously. If you look up, I'm sure if you looked up Google Images or if you looked up the movie at all, that's going to be that one of those scenes that you see is that fucking thing just kind of cockeyed, like looking down at them. And I mean, the thing's fucking huge. It's going to be, 6'5". It's massive. Hairless, pale, white eyes, elvish ears, So at this point, I mean, you're still kind of like, what the fuck are these things? They're obviously human-esque. They're humanoids. They're something that has maybe evolved or devolved, or I should say evolved to live in a cave, right? So you kind of start to put that together. And obviously, if you're still listening or watching, you understand the movie. That's kind of what it is. These things have evolved to live in this cage, this cave. I mean, sorry, cage. Might as well be a cage, right? A fucking big cage. But they've evolved. Their senses have heightened, things like that. You know what I mean? They're blind because they're living in darkness. They're obviously pulling animals in from other parts of the cave, or outside of the cave and in to eat, which gives you the idea, hey, obviously there's a way out of here, right? Not just the way they came in. So that's a good sign. They find markings and drawings and stuff like that. So you don't really, and I don't know if you find out at all through the film where these things came from, if they've been living there for centuries, or I remember when I first watched this film that maybe there was a situation, I remember thinking like, oh, what if these people that entered the cave, these other climbers, had to live down there, you know what I mean? Which obviously doesn't make sense because they found a way out to get more food and stuff like that. So these things have obviously been there for hundreds of years, probably cavemen and shit like that, and they've kind of evolved to live in this cave and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you get an exact explanation, but I always kind of liked that idea when I was younger, when I was in high school. Oh, it'd be crazy if these people did, so obviously they're not the first people in there because there's climbing equipment and stuff like that, and it's like 100 years old. But obviously they're not the first people to discover it. I always thought it was kind of cool to think that maybe these, you know, climbers had to learn how to live in there and stuff like that and shit like that. But obviously it's probably like some old, you know, some sort of Homo sapien or Homo erectus or whatever you want to fucking call them, that evolved to live in these caves, and they found safety there, and that's where they lived, and they just evolved differently than humans a little bit. They didn't need hair on their body. They could climb walls and shit, and they were blind because they didn't need to see. They needed to hear and smell better. So you get a lot of like you know creepy scenes that way, especially with that guy just standing in the background from the camcorder shot. Um, Brilliant scene. And then from here on out, I mean, we have amazing shots in this movie. You know what I mean? Amazing angles, people running, water flipping and splashing, and it looks great on camera. It really does. It's complete chaos, um, but they really do a good job at showing all this with what little light that they are using in the film. Oh man, I'm gonna have to pour myself some more whiskey. We're going through it. What are we, like 20 minutes in? Need a second glass, my friends. Again, if you guys want to buy some of this, it's Whistle Pig, 10-year rye whiskey, 100 proof. Good stuff. Thank you, Tom, if you're watching. Got it for me for my birthday. Um, so yeah, I mean, you get this chaos through these scenes, and I mean, I love this part of the movie. You really get some awesome shots of these creatures climbing on the walls, and it's just complete chaos. But it looks great. You feel like you don't miss a thing. You know what I mean? And there's some good creepy scenes, jump scenes. Um, Obviously, I think it's Holly that goes first, right? Because she broke her leg on the way down from the hole. She gets taken out. Um, and then we get the scene where Juno's freaking out, and then she hears something behind her and swings her pickaxe, and accidentally hits Beth. I think it's Beth. Gets her right in the neck, goes right through, and you're like, oh shit, now we're gonna get some blood too. We've gotten a little blood here and there, but like not much. Now you're getting quite a bit of blood. Um, Accidentally hits Beth, and just they have this scene for just a few seconds. It seems like a century that they're just staring at it in each other's eyes, and Beth is obviously dying and in shock, and then Juno also in shock as well. Doesn't know what to do. Do I help her? Is she already dead? You're in fear. So I understand that part from Juno's perspective in the story. But again, just, you know, she's just cementing her legacy as one of the worst horror characters ever. You just hate her even more now. Now you get like 3 or 4 reasons why you fucking hate this character, right? And the actor did a great job at portraying this character and making you dislike her. You know what I mean? Um, and then obviously, as the movie goes on, Sarah ends up finding Beth, and she's still alive. She's not dead, and she figures out it was Juno that did it. Beth is like, don't trust her, and you get this moment where, you know, as a friend, you don't know what to do. You want to help your friend that's dying, but you're also in this situation being chased by these fucking weird creatures, and there's really not much you can do for her, but you don't want to just leave her there alone. And Beth is saying you need to go. And then obviously she has the necklace that she ripped off of Juno's neck. And I can't remember the exact line, but it says something, right? Like, love each day or something like that. Something her husband used to tell her, Sarah's husband. And obviously that's when we get the confirmation that Juno and her husband were fooling around. That bitch. Sorry. That fucking bitch. That girl sucks so hard, dude. But we get that confirmation. Something that that we think that Sarah kind of already knew, but she didn't want to admit it, especially in the midst of all the trauma and depression from the accident with her daughter. But we finally get that in the midst of all this. So there is this little underlying theme of of trauma and depression, and who's there for you, who isn't, who you can trust, who you can't. And obviously Juno's a character and a person in this story that you can't trust. So just as much as these creatures are antagonists, Juno is right there with them. And Sarah's husband, what a dick. That guy's a dick, right? So obviously we now know that these creatures can't see and their senses have heightened and stuff like that. And we get that famous scene here where Sarah falls in the pool of blood. I think this is actually before she sees Beth, but she's running away and falls in this big pool of blood from all these animals and humans and stuff, and it's probably a lot of water as well, but they make it, the way the lights tinted and stuff like that is it's a lot of blood, and man, it looks cool. It looks so fucking cool, man. Um, and from here on out, I mean, Sarah just turns into a fucking badass. You know what I mean? Like, there's that scene where she just starts going all out. Everybody else ends up dying, right? I mean, Becca, I think it's Sam she tries to cross the ledge in the cliff and like hangs from the ceiling, and then she has to fight one of these fucking things on the ceiling and bites her throat off, and she ends up just fucking laying back and the blood's just spilling down. I mean, there's a lot of gore in this film and it looks fucking sweet. And then Becca gets dragged off, right? And then it's just Sarah and Juno, and you're like, oh, going toe to toe, right? Sarah knows some shit. Juno knows she's fucked up, but doesn't know people know anything. But I mean, Sarah just turns into a complete badass. At this point, she's literally biting the necks of these things. She's poking eyes out. I mean, she's going like Evil Dead on it, man. It was so fucking cool. I love this character. She just goes all out, dude. And at the end we get her and Juno going face to face. And to Juno's credit, she didn't want to leave Sarah behind. So I guess that's a good quality. I hate to say it, but it is. But obviously they come face to face and Sarah's not having it, right? She lifts the pickaxe, and there's that cool scene where she fucking drops she drops the necklace from her fist as well. And I mean, it's really cool looking. You're like, oh, she doesn't even have to say a word. Juno knows what's going on now. Throws the pickaxe into the side of her knee, leaves her for dead, right? Falls down a little hill, and then wakes up and you see light, and you're like, what the fuck? There's just light all of a sudden. And yeah, she climbs herself out of the hole, out of the cave, right? And it's like this weird imagery and symbolism of her coming out of her own cave of trauma and depression. So there is that underlying theme and that symbolism there. I think maybe it was done on purpose, maybe it wasn't, but you have this feeling that now she's going towards the light. She's kind of, it's been a year since the death, and she's gone through all this shit, and she's trying to get back to normal life. But then again, I mean, you're in a cave and you're getting eaten by these humanoid, fucking weird, pale creatures, and all your friends are dead. So I mean, there's obviously a whole nother box of trauma to unpack, right? Fucking wild. But yeah, I mean, so I think there is a little bit of symbolism there. But she gets out, she drives, she finds the car, and she goes down the road, and you think she's scot free, and then she sees Juno in the car bleeding, and then all of a sudden it snaps back. She's having one of her nightmares again, and she's just laying on the floor of the cave, and you're like, oh wow, okay, so she didn't make it out. Now I heard somewhere that wasn't the original ending. They were gonna go with her just making it out, which I feel like happens in all those early 2000 movies, but this one they decided to bring it back. She wakes up in the cave, she sees her daughter with her her birthday cake, and like you've seen throughout the whole movie, and then you just hear these creatures coming for her, so you just understand that she's probably gonna die, right? They just leave it at that. A little bit of a cliffhanger, cave hanger, I should say, right? That's a stupid joke. But yeah, kind of a little bit of an ambiguous ending. Well, not really, because I mean, you understand that she's gonna fucking die, but I don't know if it would have been better to go with her surviving, or if it was better to leave her back in the cave, which I guess makes more sense, because I mean, are you really going to find a way out of this place, you know? The cave system seems huge, right? They haven't found there's all these different tunnels. Did she just so happen to walk down the right one? I don't know. Maybe you guys can say in the comments whether you like the ending or not. Um, Overall, I really like the movie. I really do. I think it's, I always wondered, you see it on a lot of people's top 10 or top 20 movies, and I was always kind of like, oh, what? Really? That feels like a little bit of a cop out. Is it really that good? I always remembered liking it, but this does give me a lot of reassurance with this movie that it is really good. It's well executed for sure. Like I said, it's not exactly a masterpiece in my eyes, but it is a master of the jump scare, um, and just being able to control the eeriness and the environment around it. You really using the scariness of a cave to your advantage. Still keeping enough light in the shot. It's not just completely dark all the time, and they use different types of light. They have red light, they have green light. Um, from these big glow sticks that cave explorers use. There's a lot of cool things that they do, and they keep it pretty natural. Um, yeah, it's just very, very effective movie, and it's really good. I'm proud to have it in the collection. Um, a lot of people seem to like this movie. I haven't heard many people say that this movie isn't that good. A lot of people. I think also this is a movie that when I talk to people and they're not like huge horror fans, it feels like that this movie is when they're like, "Oh, I don't love horror movies, but I do love that movie, The Descent." I feel like I hear that a lot actually. And I definitely heard a lot of it growing up, and I just never really thought much of it because I had only seen it once, maybe twice, but that is seeing it again is reassuring that this is a good movie, and I don't know if it's gonna get lost in time a little bit. People still do love it. It's not talked about that much, but I think it's gonna survive the test of time. I really do. They don't use a lot of special effects or CGI or anything just for those stupid bats. That fucking bat scene was dumb. They should have just cut that out and it would have been fucking perfect as far as effects go, right? The gore is fucking great. It's all fucking practical. It looks anyway, and if it's not, it's dark enough. It's a dark enough movie, right? That you can't really tell, especially with the blood. So just a lot of good scene cutting and stuff like that to make it look really awesome. And there's just not much wrong with it, so I really can't complain. And yeah, I mean, you get a really, really awesome character, a really likable character in Sarah, and then you get a really unlikable character with Juno. So you have this yin yang type of thing, which is always good and makes it more entertaining if you can sit there and swear at the TV because you hate this one fucking character, but then you love this other character. And I mean, Sarah goes badass, man. She just goes savage mode, and I fucking love that. They just show her she just had enough. She just starts biting these things and poking eyes out and all this bullshit. It's fucking awesome. Um, so yeah, overall, I really fucking like this movie. Um, Definitely gonna watch it again soon. It's something that I haven't watched enough, obviously. And now when people ask me about The Descent, I'm gonna say, hey, yeah, definitely check it out. You're gonna like it. And if you watch it late enough at night get some popcorn going, turn the lights down. I mean, it's a creepy one. It's good. Jump scares are effective. They really get you. I've never been huge on jump scares. I like the slow burns mostly, but this movie it just does it right. Like I said, super effective, um, super awesome. Yeah, so that's a good one. I hope you guys liked this episode. I know I haven't done one in a while. I've been working on our new film, Devils Are We, doing some pre-production stuff and going over the script and getting ready to do more filming. So be on the lookout for that. And I'm hoping to have some guests on. I've talked to some of my friends. Some of them are gonna come on, and we're gonna do some episodes, and I'm gonna have some more guests and stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys sticking around. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Comment on this video if you like this movie. Let me know how you feel about it. And yeah, I appreciate it, guys. You have a good day, all right? Home of horror, the home of horror podcast. Home of horror, the home of horror podcast.